Hello student, we are in the second part of Complete Guide to Accounting Equation. In the previous video, we covered part 1 of Complete Guide to Accounting Equation and we will be continuing from that video. We are looking at transactions and how they will be treated in accounting equation. Interest on capital. We need to deduct from capital and also add to capital. The reason we deduct from capital is because interest on capital is an expense to the firm. The reason we add to capital is because it is an income for the proprietor. And the proprietor's account is represented by capital. Interest on drawings. Again, we deduct from capital and add to capital. The reason we deduct from capital is because it's an expense to the proprietor. And proprietor's account is represented by capital. And the reason we add to capital is because it's an income for the business. Sale of furniture costing 2,000 for 2,500. We add to cash 2,500. Cash is an asset. We add to capital the profit of 500 rupees because the sale of furniture is costing 2,000 for 2,500 and we deduct from furniture rupees 2,000 and furniture is also an asset. Sale of furniture costing 4,000 for 2,500. We add to cash 2,500. Cash is an asset. We deduct from capital the loss of 1,500 and we deduct from furniture the book value of the furniture, which is 4,000. Furniture is an asset. Outstanding expenses. Salaries due but not paid. Example, we need to create a liability called outstanding salaries. And we also need to deduct from capital because it's an expense which is incurred, although it is not yet paid. Prepaid expense. Example, rent paid in advance. We need to create an asset called prepaid rent. And we also need to deduct from cash. Cash is an asset. Accrued income. Example, interest due but not received. We need to create an asset called accrued interest and we need to add to capital because it's an income which is earned although it is not yet received. Advance income, rent received in advance. We need to create a liability called advance rent. And we also need to add to cash because the amount has already been received. Cash is an asset. Bills payable accepted. We need to deduct from creditors. Creditors is a liability. And we will add to bills payable. Bills payable is also a liability. Bills payable dishonored. We need to add to creditors. Creditors is a liability and we will deduct from bills payable. Bills payable is also a liability. Bills receivable drawn on debtors. We need to deduct from debtors. Debtors is an asset and we need to add to bills receivable, which is an asset. bills receivable dishonored. We need to deduct from bills receivable, which is an asset, and we need to add to debtors, which is also an asset. Cash paid to creditors, we need to deduct from cash, which is an asset, and we'll deduct from creditors, which is a liability. Cash received from debtors, we need to add to cash, which is an asset, and deduct from debtors, which is also an asset. Payment made to creditors rupees 17,500 in full settlement of their debt of 20,000. So we owe them 20,000, but we are going to make a payment to the creditor of only 17,500 in full settlement of the debt. So the amount of difference, which is 2,500, is discount which is received. Discount received is an income, so I will add 2,500 to capital. I will deduct from cash, which is an asset, 17,500, and I will deduct from creditors the entire amount of rupees 20,000. Creditors is a liability. Payment received from debtors rupees 12,000 in full settlement of their debt for rupees 12,500. So the debtors owe you 12,500, but they are going to make a payment and give you rupees 12,000 in full settlement. So the difference of rupees 500 is discount allowed, which is an expense for the company, and therefore we will deduct from capital. We will deduct from debtors 12,500. Debtors is an asset, and we'll add to cash 12,000. Cash is an asset. Additional capital introduced, we will add to cash, which is an asset, and we'll also add to capital. Depreciation 10% on furniture worth 20,000. We will deduct from furniture 10% of 20,000, which is 2,000. Furniture is an asset, and we'll also deduct from capital the amount of 2,000 because depreciation is an expense, and any expense should be deducted from capital. Sold goods costing rupees 15,000 for rupees 18,000, out of which rupees 5,000 is received in cash. We need to deduct from stock rupees 15,000. Stock is an asset. We need to add to cash rupees 5,000. Cash is also an asset. We need to add to debtors 18,000 minus 5,000, the amount of the credit sale. Debtors is an asset. And the profit, which is 18,000 minus the cost of the goods sold, which is 15,000, 3,000 profit will be added to capital. Purchased building from Sohan, paid by raising a loan from the State Bank of India. We need to add to building. Building is an asset. And we need to add to bank loan. Bank loan is a liability. Paid interest on loan 20,000 and installment rupees 2 lakh. The total cash paid is 2,20,000, and we need to deduct from cash. Cash is an asset. The installment of rupees 2 lakh we need to deduct from the amount of the loan. Loan is a liability. And the expense of 20,000 interest we need to deduct from capital because 20,000 is an expense. Bought refrigerator for personal use. We need to deduct from cash. Cash is an asset. And we also need to deduct from capital because it's drawings, which has to be deducted from capital. So we've completed the entries in Complete Guide to Accounting Equation.